I'll share this love I find.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right. I'm Dharmesh. And I think you folks have figured out the hashtag at this point. Thank you all for being energetic, which you're going to be this afternoon. I'm the co-founder and CTO, Chief Technology Officer, at a company called Hubspot. We sell marketing and sales software to small and medium-sized businesses. And that's about all I'm going to say or talk about Hubspot. And I'm going to give you a quick confession to open out. This is what they tell you never to do in presentation school, which I've never been to. But so yesterday I came in early to New York, and I'm like, OK, I'll finish up my slides because I've already missed 4 deadlines for getting these slides in. And then I'll go out and I'll socialize with the C3 goers, so to speak. So it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm still working on my slides. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm still working on my slides. But then I had committed to Laura and the team. Thank you, by the way, for indulging me. They've been awesome. So I sent it out, like, OK, all is done here. This is as much as I can do. And I passed out at 3 o'clock in the morning, turned the phone off, turned everything off. And it was quiet, and I got some sleep. And the alarm goes off in the room right next to me. It's like, crap, I cannot account for that. And it proceeds to go on for about 20, 30 minutes. And I think the person there had either left the room or was dead. I don't know. I'm a nice person, so I'm going to assume they just left the room and forgot to unset their alarm. So whoever you were, thanks a lot. So a word of caution. So I'm CTO. I'm not a marketer. I don't play a marketer on TV. I can get pretty geeky. It's inappropriate for audiences like this that are kind of more general, although here I think it would be OK. And there's a very good reason for the presentation to be geeky, and it's because I'm inappropriately geeky, just the way it is. So let's jump in. Artificial intelligence, high-level definition, it's basically when computers and software can do things that we thought require human intelligence. There are hundreds of definitions of AI that are out there. I picked this one because it's relatively simple, and also because there are 2 types of people in the world. There are the kinds of people that get hung up on definitions. Oh, that's not broad enough. It's too narrow. It's this, it's that. And there are the people you want to have a drink with. I like to fall in the second category if I can, so I don't get hung up on definitions. And because AI is so broad, what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on this kind of sub-component of AI called machine learning. And the reason I picked that is because I think it's the most applicable in the near to midterm to marketing itself. We can talk about lots of things in AI. We have limited time, so we're going to focus in on machine learning. And machine learning is the ability to provide software or build software that actually learns from experience and where you don't have to explicitly tell it what to do. So let's say there were a spectrum, both for software and for people. On one end of the spectrum, you have to tell them every little thing, like do this and do that, and if this happens, do that, and it's just like a junior employee that just never learns. It's like, OK, well, they have to give them explicit directions. If anything ever goes wrong or changes or whatever, they freak out, right? This is most software. You have to explicitly give it directions. On the other end, you have the star employee, and you have machine learning-based software, which is, here's what we're solving for. This is what we want to happen. Based on the data we have, you can try things, you can do things, figure it out. That's what machine learning essentially imbues software with, is the ability to kind of figure out and solve for a goal without having to give it explicit directions in terms of how to achieve that goal. And that's why it's exciting. So let's illustrate this by way of a concrete example. Let's say our marketer, it's 3 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. I need to send out a marketing campaign and send out messages to 30,000 people in this segmented list. So what do? There are stages of sophistication in terms of what you might do. The naive approach is to say, it's only 3 p.m. I've still got time to get it out. I'll send it out. Now, if you're statistically oriented, you would think of this as an almost random distribution, right? You're just as likely to pick 3 p.m. as you were 2 p.m. on Friday. It's actually slightly better than random because random would factor in like weekends and nights and 2 a.m., which is not a great time to send messages out because that's not when humans are generally around, but that's the naive approach. The somewhat informed approach is, hey, I read an article once that said, hey, Mondays are better for sending these campaigns out, so I'll increase my open rate, my click rate, by sending it out Monday. Somewhat informed. Data-powered. It's like, oh, we have information, we have data on all of our subscribers, or many of them, and we know the time zone, so we will send the message during business hours for that particular person. They'll be more likely to open it if we send it during when we think they'll be awake and working and doing those kinds of things. Machine learning powered is to say, you figure it out. Let the software figure out when to send it for each individual person based on all available data. Now, this is the key. In the past, we've always thought about available data as being like, okay, we've got these things in our marketing automation or email system, and we're going to use those things to figure out this kind of optimum send time. When I say all available data, I mean literally all the data you can possibly bring to bear on the problem, because that influences the software, and that drives up its ability to achieve the goal you're looking for. So let's look at an example. Let's say you're sending messages to Seth at Conductor, and we have some past history with Seth, so we know that between like 7 a.m. and 2 p.m., he almost never opens our email. We know that. We have the data. Fine, so we could solve for that. But the other thing we know is that if the time elapsed since Seth's last tweet is less than 30 minutes, he is 10 times more likely to open the email if we send it right then. Now, that's data that's publicly available. It's out there, so we can watch Seth's tweets and say, oh, he just tweeted, let's send the message out that's in the queue to Seth. Now, that's just one example. We have so much information now that we can bring to bear on this problem to say, okay, well, we have all these things, figure out how to solve for the goal that I want. Now, we're going to have, we almost already sort of have autonomous self-driving vehicles. Google's working on it, Tesla's working on it, obviously, Ford's working on it. It's going to happen. And often people are a little bit uncomfortable by this because it's one of those things like, okay, well, would I really trust a vehicle to kind of transport me in software in a machine? And the answer is you will. It's already happening now. And I've been in enough Ubers right now, it's like, if there was an autopilot button in this Uber right now, I would put my life in the hands of software versus the person driving. But the reason this is going to happen is because this is really a software problem. Driving is a software problem. You have a bunch of inputs, distance to the next car, who's in the next lane. We have a bunch of data that says, oh, when this sort of thing is happening, here's what turns out to be. So if you have millions of miles worth of data and all this input coming in, the software will be and is much better at making the decisions necessary to solve for the outcome, which is don't crash, don't die, than humans are. It's just a matter of time, right? It's already happening. For the same reason, we will also have autonomous, self-driving marketing automation. Why? For the same reason. It's a data problem. We have all these inputs. We have historical data. And right now, I'm going to go on a rant. So right now, what we expect marketers to do is like, okay, we gave you this brand new shiny, and HubSpot is as guilty as anyone that provides marketing software. Here's this brand shiny workflow automation tool, and you can do branching logic, and you can say, well, we're going to send this message, and then 3 days later, we're going to send that message, and then if they clicked on that message, we're going to branch over here and do this thing and that thing. And in most cases, marketers have not that good of an idea of what's actually going to work. We cannot expect humans to kind of hold all that stuff in their heads and basically a combination of guessing and praying, right? It's like, okay, I'm just going to do this, and we'll see how it goes, and then no one wants to change it because, well, who wants to change that? And so the rant is this, is like we need to stop as an industry expecting humans to do things that are rote, data-oriented, repetitive. We need to get them to stop doing that, and then also stop getting computers to do things that require human creativity and actually add value. That's the rant. Now, I don't have a slide on this, but I'm going to say it, even though it's controversial. One of the areas that's being worked on right now is content generation using software, where you actually produce a blog article or a news article based on. I personally, as geeked out as I am on software, as much as I'm a believer in AI, I'm not a big believer in content generation. The reason is the value in most cases for well-done content is the actual perspective and the insight. If you're just looking to dump data, like we can take information from an earnings report or from a sports game and say, okay, I'm going to take these numbers and I'm going to generate a narrative, but that narrative will give you the information in a form that's like generating a chart, but it's not really driving the insight. It's not really saying, here's someone with expertise, with an opinion, that's going to share this insight with me. Anyway, so that's my rant. We need to stop trying to get computers to do that kind of stuff and focus on getting them to do the things that humans should not be doing. There's no reason to do it. On the content side, one thing, and the industry's been working on this for a long, long time. The reason I bring this out now is content recommendation is going to start to get a lot better because the tools are getting a lot better in terms of the algorithms that are available to us. So this is something that I know Conductor's working on. Is the ability is like, okay, we produce all this content, we have thousands of pieces of content, how do we ensure we get the most value out of that particular kind of asset base that we have of content? By the way, what I'm going to do here for a little while is just run through use cases in terms of possible examples of where AI applies to the real world of marketing. And I'm going to pause every now and then and pretend I'm making eye contact with the audience, which I don't do. I'm an introvert. And make sure everybody's still with me, which seems they are. OK. For the B2B amongst you, B2B marketers, we produce leads. That's part of your job. It's like, OK, I create N number of leads. I pass it along to the sales team. And we have things like lead scoring to figure out which leads of the ones that we generate are worthy of passing along to the sales team because there's enough economic potential value there. The one thing we are very, very bad at as an industry, and it impacts us as marketers, is actually sending that lead to the right person. There are two ways that leads normally, for 95% of the cases that I've ever seen, two ways that leads get routed. One is round robin, which is essentially a roughly even random distribution. I'm just going to send it to the next person, next person, next person. I'm going to spread my leads across available salespeople. That's way number one. Has the value of being simple, straightforward. Another one is territory-based. Right? It's like, oh, this sales rep owns Massachusetts, right? So like, OK, we send this lead that just came in to the sales rep in Massachusetts, and it was like, oh, does that sales rep live in Massachusetts? Well, no, not really. Have they worked in the industry of this lead? Is it financial? Well, not really. So it's like, what we need to be able to do is to say, OK, well, we spent all this time and money producing this lead. Yes, we qualified it, we scored it. But let's now put it in the hands of the person that's most likely to close that lead. If you have a salesperson that works with startups and does great, doesn't matter what state they're in, they have a history of succeeding with this profile customer. The idea here is take the investment you've already made and maximize the outcome, which impacts us marketers because sales judges us based on how much revenue actually gets generated. So I think this is something that's going to happen. It's inevitable. Persona development. This one's more subtle. There's a bit of a geeky part to this. OK. So as marketers, many of us have worked on personas where we try to come up with this customer persona around, and HubSpot has done this as well. We have one called Marketing Mary. It's like, she's 35 to 45, has worked in marketing for 5 or 7 years, drives a Prius, whatever the thing is. And we have this kind of notion of this persona. And the idea is to kind of help people talk about this target customer profile, essentially. That's what personas are useful for. So then you can drive your marketing campaigns and your strategy around those personas, which is a fine thing to do. If you haven't done it yet, you totally should do it. Where we're headed with AI is to do something similar, but using data. Now, the cool thing about this, so most of the examples I've talked about so far is what's called supervised machine learning. So it's not like there's like a chaperone or something like that. The reason they call it supervised is that you have existing data, including what was successful and what was not, and you train the software based on that data, and then it uses that training and that learning to figure out future things, how to make decisions in the future that will kind of map to things we've learned. Persona development uses unsupervised training. So what ends up happening is there's no data it's looking at the entire base of customers that you have and finding buckets that are drawn a specific way that says, okay, here's this cluster of customers that have these things in common that tend to have behavioral patterns that are similar. That should be a persona. And that is a much more effective way than trying to kind of intuit what 2, 3, 5 personas that you have, data-oriented personas, or at least data-informed personas will be much more effective going forward. Another thing on the machine learning front. We know podcasts are a big deal. Audio is a big deal. We now have the technology to take any piece of textual content, a blog article, and convert it into almost human-sounding speech. This is within the last 6 to 12 months. Almost human-sounding speech for pennies. And that's not expensive. Amazon just released a toolkit called Amazon Polly, as in the parrot. And it does exactly that. It's like, you have this textual content, and it will read it to you and convert it into an MP3 file that you can make available on your website. So the thinking here is, OK, let's use machine learning to take the content we've already produced and make it available in the form that our customers and our website visitors would actually enjoy. It doesn't cost us that much extra. The marginal cost of converting to audio is almost zero. Why wouldn't we do that? And the answer is we would. So in the future, every blog post essentially should be converted to audio and made available right on the website. There's no reason not to. All right. I'm going to spend a lot of time on this one because it's weird and subtle, and it predicts the Facebook apocalypse and how they're going to own the world, which they sort of already do. But so we've thought about, we the marketers have thought about social media as a way to kind of connect, and we form these relations, and we communicate. That's what social media has been. But within Facebook itself and other social media sites, the data is actually what's more important. So in the future, what's going to happen, and we may not be able to get the data from Facebook directly. They're likely not going to give it to us. but they will give it to us indirectly by way of targeted ads and technology they sell. It says, oh, we have this data about your users, and we're going to use that data to power an algorithm that will help you achieve whatever outcome you're looking to achieve, be it advertising or whatever. So that's one of the things that's changing, is social media now is as much about the data and the AI that happens. Forget who said it, but Paul Rotzer from PR 2020 has a really great quote. He says, Facebook is an AI company that just happens to have a social network. The social network is actually incidental, as it turns out. All right, search. Obviously, Google is using AI. They've been using it for a while. You guys are going to talk about SEO-y kind of things, I know, because you can't help it. It's OK. So that's changed. The other thing that's changing, though, is on the consumer side of it, the way we search, how we search terms are getting longer and longer because an increasing percentage of them are voice-based. As we get trained by things like Alexa and Google Home and devices like that, as humans, we're going to get used to not typing cheap pizza Boston. We're going to say, is there a pizza place in Boston that meets my budget or won't break the bank or something like that, right? We're going to ask questions in a much more natural way because search is going to change philosophically. It's like, I have this question, I'm going to just ask it instead of trying to do the magical, I'm going to pick these keywords and see what happens. And then, no, I'll try it again. So that's changing. Let's talk about video. So we all, I think, have accepted the fact that video, as it currently stands, is the chosen format, right? If you look at most of the numbers, they're all going up and to the right. That's like the content format that many consumers, both B2C and B2B, actually prefer. One thing that's new, as in 3 days ago, is that YouTube reported, and they have 10x the number of hours of video watched on YouTube, and the expectation is it's going to actually exceed, just YouTube itself, not all video sites, not Facebook, just YouTube itself will exceed, in terms of hours spent, exceed television relatively soon, within the next year and a half, 2 years. And here's a Wall Street Journal article that talks about that from 3 days ago. Now, one of the things the article talks about is the way they got there is by using machine learning and AI to essentially recommend videos to people. It's like, oh, okay, you watch this thing. This is not new. It's not surprising. It's not counterintuitive. It's like Netflix, but for YouTube, right? They're recommending the content, so drive up the number of hours that someone will spend on YouTube, which makes complete sense. Now, that's all good for YouTube. As marketers, the impact to us on video and AI is how we can analyze the video assets we have and we're producing and understand them much better. So let me give you an example. HubSpot has 1,000 videos, right, on our YouTube channel, 1,002, I looked. And what we don't have, other than the somewhat kind of light analytics that YouTube provides, what we don't have is information on those videos. For instance, what I would love to have, and this is going to be possible, is to analyze every video we have and say, tag them with who the speakers are. When did people abandon that video based on which speaker came up? So let's say we took all the the C3 videos and tagged them all together. It's like, oh, here's what people liked. Here's what they came back for. Here are the speakers that did really well. Here's when the audience went, oh my God, that's brilliant, or weren't applauding or bored. I don't know. But the AI will be able to tell and analyze that content in video that we've never been able to do before. And we're close. This is not that far. It's one of those things. Now, with all of this stuff, as it turns out, it used to be that succeeding in AI was almost all about the quality of your algorithms. How smart were your PhDs? How deeply researched were they? How connected were they? And how good could your algorithm be? What's happening is that those algorithms now are still being produced by companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook that are very, very good at this. But all of those companies that I just mentioned are exposing the algorithms themselves as licensable technology. So classification algorithms, unsupervised classification, persona development stuff, all of this is now possible through Amazon, possible through Google, through products that they have that are relatively cheap to acquire, so you don't have to spend as much time hiring an army of PhDs and developing the algorithm. Now the rub is, if it's not the algorithms, which I don't think it is, and it's trending downwards, what's trending upwards is the data, because machine learning cannot exist without the data to actually inform the algorithm. So data becomes 10 times more important than it ever has been before. This is probably the #1 challenge most of us in the room are going to be dealing with over the course of the next couple of years. Because most companies are swimming, arguably drowning, in this ocean of data, right? We have data all over the place. And the way we've kind of tackled tactically, it's like, oh, well, I have this piece of information, I need this question answered, is we go fishing around. It's like, oh, I know that exists over here. Maybe I'll write a sync. Maybe I'll do an export from over there. I'll bring it into this thing, and I will kind of try and get the answer or the report or the chart that my boss asked for. I will try and get that together somehow, some way, which is fine. We'll continue to do that. Not fine, but it's OK. Not OK. We're going to continue to do that. The problem is that particular approach does not work in the world of machine learning. It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because the whole premise of machine learning is we don't know which data is going to be the signal that provides us the best outcomes. We don't know if it's the email marketing data or the social data or the landing page data or the web traffic data. We don't know what it is that's going to actually be the secret to unlock the outcomes we're looking for. So the byproduct of that particular observation is that, OK, well, we're going to have to spend time getting the data into consumable form so that the algorithms can be unleashed upon that data. If we don't have the data, the AI just can't happen. So that's one of the challenges. Now, in terms of AI and machine learning, the thing I'm most excited about, troublingly excited about, is a chatbot. Now, you've heard of chatbots because they're everywhere. Chatbot here, chatbot there. And you've probably heard it enough, or you will, not probably have, where you have this kind of reaction. It's like, say bot one more time. I dare you. And it's understandable because it's like many fads that have come before. It's like, oh, it's all this, it's all that. This time it's different. This thing is a very, very real thing. So let's, back to definitions. All a chatbot is software that you can interact with a conversation. It's software you converse with, whether it's over text or whether it's over voice, like with things like Alexa, but it's essentially software. And the reason now versus 5 years, and we've been working on chatbot-ish things for a long time as an industry, the reason now is that actually sending messages is becoming much more natural than ever was. So this data is overwhelming and universal. It's like messaging apps are taking over in terms of usage. So that's spiking in terms of WhatsApp. So that's growing. Messenger alone now is over 1 billion people. And it's not just a consumer phenomenon. It's not just people texting their friends. Increasingly, people are using messaging as a way to collaborate in the workplace. How many people use Slack? Show of hands in work. It's roughly half-ish that are willing to actually raise their hand, because there's people like me that won't raise their hand for anything, but that's just, OK, it's a personality trait. So just a quick tangent in terms of this movement towards messaging. We're going to get back to bots. One of the outcomes of this shift towards messaging is the fact that not that you would do this anyway, but you can't buy a list anymore. I'm going to say that one more time, OK? Back then, even though kind of email spammy stuff was bad, it's like, OK, people still did it because you still could. And then you had the hopes that, oh, I'm going to send out 500,000 because I bought this targeted list. And it's like, in the world of messaging, there is no way to do that. You cannot go to Zuckerberg and say, hey, here's some money. Can you give me a list of your Facebook users on Messenger? There's no way to do it, right? So there's gatekeepers now that we never had before. So if there was ever a time to do customer-first marketing, this is that time. It's no longer optional, right? It's actually required. OK, so back to bots. I've been obsessed enough about, so we have a group at HubSpot called Hubspot Labs, which I lead, for a very loose definition of the word lead. And within Labs, I've been obsessed with building a bot, just to learn about how chatbots work. And I've always had this kind of desire to build something. And so the question is like, OK, well, why, of all the things you could have worked on, why that? And the reason is because conversational UI and chatbots are, in my mind, the biggest thing we've seen in technology, in software, for at least the last 3-ish decades, as long as I've been working in it. And here's why. So originally, we had the click, whether it was Windows or Mac desktop or the browser. Then we had touch, iPhone, iPad. Some might say swipe left, swipe right was the actual defining interaction. That's fine. No, I'm not judging. But now, we're able to converse with software. And now let me tell you why this is a big deal. Software developers, including me, especially me, have always said, since the history of software, we have built an easy-to-use, intuitive application. No one, I've never read a press release that's like, oh, XYZ company launches this completely counterintuitive application for XYZ industry. I've never heard those words spoken or read. Now, but the reality, so we say that, oh, it's intuitive because it's easy. Like we laid the menus out just perfect, and like whether it's a website or software, whatever it is. The reality is, it's not 100% intuitive. It can't be because whatever thing I had in my head that I was trying to do, I have to transform it into things I know about the software, into a series of clicks and steps and touches in order to accomplish the thing that I was trying to do. Whatever it is, whether it's a marketing automation system, Google Analytics, whatever it is. The beauty of chatbots and conversational UI is we can get much, much closer to the actual intuitive software. So if you have the question in your head, it's like, I want to know month over month how our traffic was last month versus last year because I'm wondering whether there's a seasonal impact on traffic or not. It's like, is January this year any better or worse than January last year? Now, that's a solvable problem. You can go to Google Analytics or your analytics thing of choice, and you can answer that question through a series of touches and clicks, and you'd figure it out. With chatbots, you can just ask the questions like, give me a chart of my month-over-month traffic from last January to this January, and it spits out a chart that you can plug into PowerPoint. It's that easy. So I was going to show you like a demo, but that would have been too self-serving. So I'm not going to do that. But the bot is called GrowthBot. It's growthbot.org. It's free. I work on it every single night, and it's cool. It's used by thousands of people right now. You can ask questions like, what are the top inbound links to Conductor.com? Who are the top followers for XYZ Twitter account? How much approximately does Uber.com spend on PPC? Who does XYZ compete with? All these things. So it hits all these APIs. SEMrush, who's here, a sponsor, thank you. BuzzSumo, Moz, HubSpot, Google Analytics. It will talk to all these different systems and try to answer your questions. And I think it does a reasonable job at it. It's still early. All right. But that's not why you should be excited. It's cool. You'll play with it. Hopefully you like it. But there's another application for chatbots that's much, much bigger and much more impactful. And I'm going to talk a little bit about websites. So decades ago, we started building websites. We marketers, other people did too, but marketers started building websites. And the question is like, well, why did we do that? Well, the answer is because it helped our customers. Gave them answers at 2 o'clock in the morning to questions that they had. I'm going to posit to you that in the future, we're going to build bots, not to replace the website, but to power the website. And the question is, well, why would we do that? For the same reason we built websites is to help the customer out and answer their questions. Because as it turns out, when a customer has a question, the shortest distance between the question they have and the answer is going to be a bot. It's not going to be, well, we have this intuitive website, and you can just, like, if your question is, does your product support Spanish? It's like, oh, you can go to our product and go to languages or go to the international thing. So we've got 8 ways to get there. The easiest way is for the website visitors to be able to ask the question, does your product support Spanish? Do you have an office in Cleveland? That kind of thing. All right, so spin through. Now, kind of winding down, there are some worries and concerns folks have about AI and machine learning and chatbots and all this stuff. One of them is, oh, well, if all this machine learning AI stuff gets smart enough, is it going to replace all marketers? Are we all going to be out of jobs? And the answer is, so no, I don't think so. It's not human versus bot. It's not this kind of epic battle. It's actually human to the bot power. I think of bots as an amplifier. Machine learning is an amplifier. So Jobs famously once said, computers are like the bicycle of the mind. In my mind, like AI is the bicycle for computers. That doesn't make any sense. I'm just kidding. It's like this. Okay. Other concerns. It's like, oh, well, that's like all this AI machine learning stuff is kind of creepy. It feels off. It doesn't feel right. Whenever I see it happen, it's like, oh, it's kind of weird. That's true. Right now, it is kind of weird. But over time, what's going to happen is artificial intelligence is going to get less and less artificial. It's going to be a natural part of our lives and more intelligent. It's already happening. It's happening very, very quickly. Okay, fine. But machines really are never going to be empathetic. They're not going to be compassionate. Like software doesn't do that. And so the question is it possible, how does being like a customer-first marketer work in the age of machines? And can computers or software actually be empathetic? I'm going to make my point by a very simple example. Just about all of you have likely had a canceled flight sometime in the last year, 2 years. Statistically, it's very, very likely. When that happens, I want you to think about the last time that happened It's like, okay, you're standing in line, you finally get there. It's like they know, it's the airline. They know the flight got canceled. They know what town you're trying to get to. They know all the things. Now think about it. It's like, okay, like if there were a bot that knew all the things, like, oh, I know you're trying to get to Minneapolis. You have two options. We can get you on the last flight out tonight or the first flight out tomorrow morning, and then you can ask the questions like, okay, well, what time does that second thing? It's like, book me on the morning flight. If you could do that in 30 seconds, in my mind, that's a much more compassionate approach than the humans have in that kind of situation, because the humans cannot, and it's not their fault. In that kind of situation, they don't have the complete context. They can't, right? They can't sift through all your historical data ever. Like, oh, you'd never take red-eye flights. So I'm going to make the first option the one that's out in the morning. I know you need a hotel. I know this, 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 and this. So imagine this kind of all-knowing bot that could actually do the thing you want it to do. I think that's a much more compassionate approach than forcing us to deal with humans in bad situations. All right. So I'm going to pause, and this is ironic, by the way, is that I think machines will actually help us, both marketing across, will actually help us be more human. Because what it will do is it will take the rote stuff that we shouldn't be able to do, that's not what we're wired for, and give it to the machines so we can actually have more real relationships. We can actually invest. We can tap into our creativity and all the things that we do well. We can do those things instead of generating that third report out of Excel spreadsheet because the boss wanted it just this other way. It's like we shouldn't have to do that. Okay. Yes, but this stuff feels so early. It doesn't work. It's kind of, yeah. I'm going to skip by the photo of my son, in the interest of time. That's him on a MacBook Pro. He just turned 6. He inherited that from me. Had nothing to do with the fact that the new MacBook Pro had just come out, and it was just love. So yes, it's early. It's very, very early. But I want you to think about artificial intelligence in 2017 like the internet was in 97. So in 97, the internet was ugly and bad and non-useful in many, many, many ways. I can say with almost certainty this will have an equally profound effect. Thank you.